Time to get Steve Phillips' insights into some of the contracts we learned of yesterday and some of the rumor and innuendo that's floating around the trade market, specifically around Cleveland closer Emmanuel Clase. Steve, good morning. We hear a lot of smoke about people calling for Clase. Is, in fact, there a deal to be had?
Well, I think, listen, there can be a lot of teams that are interested. There's no question about that. I just don't understand it from Cleveland's perspective. The American League Central is a winnable division right now. I would rather see them add another big bat to go with Jose Ramirez, with the Naylor brothers, and see if they can't score enough to support what's really good pitching. Look, I get Bieber maybe trying to trade him, but if the market's not there, play it out. Let him go out and pitch for you this year and go get a draft pick at the end of the year. But I look at it and think for Clase, he's under control through 2028. And he's only making $10 million a year in 2027, 2028. He's one of the best closers in the game. And I get his velocity was down a little bit last year. Maybe the strikeout number is not quite the same. The dude pitched in 75 games, the second most of any reliever in baseball, and he's a closer. So for my money, I keep him. Any trade they can make right now for Emmanuel Clase, they can do it at the deadline, they can do it next offseason, they can do it next year's deadline, because they've got control through 2028. So why not see if you can win and then trade him if you don't want to do it? But it doesn't make any sense to me right now why they would try to trade him. So I get why there's interest. He's young and he's got a great arm.
I'm with you on that. And the old Fred Clare philosophy of trade pitchers a year early as opposed to a year late seems to be now that's on steroids. It's now trade him 3 years too early instead of a year too late. So I get the rationale of holding that. Let's talk about and get your thoughts on the contracts that we learned of yesterday. Jose Altuve, now an Astro for life, so it would appear, with a 5-year extension that kicks in after this coming season.
Yeah, so look, I think it's great. I think he's one of those guys who could start his career and end his career with the one team. He'll finish this contract at the age of 39. He's got an outside shot at 3,000 hits in his career. He might have to play a year or two after his age 39 season. But I think this is a great thing for him, and it's great for the Astros. I think the real question is not what does he bring and that he's going to be there, is what does it mean for everybody else? Alex Bregman's a free agent at the end of this season. Are they going to sign him and bring him back? Kyle Tucker's got 2 more years of control. Framber Valdez, 2 more years of control. So you start thinking about how many of these guys can they sign for the long term? And I think Tucker's inevitably going to free agency. I just think that he's going to go out there, ride the market, and he might get paid beyond what the Astros are willing to do. I still would think there's a hope that they could sign Bregman and keep him and Altuve and Framber Valdez. But I think they're going to have some tough decisions to have to make. Kind of a mid-market team. You can't sign all of these guys. But Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, and one of the other bats, and maybe Valdez, gives them that solid core to keep the window open for the next decade, potentially.
Hey, Steve, I'd like your take on this, because earlier we were playing a little game about franchise second basemen, and I'm sure you have an interesting perspective on this. Biggio, Altuve. I actually think at the end of the campaign, Altuve might be the guy that people would think about. Number one, he's got 2 rings on his fingers. But Biggio, he's not going to catch him in hits. There's going to be some categories where Biggio's there, but I just kind of wanted your take on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, Altuve's a career 300 hitter, over 300. I would take Altuve over Biggio. I think there's more damage done, right? The damage meter with, the damage to contact ratio is more significant for him. Now, maybe it's the ballpark factor there at Minute Maid where it factors into his swing quite well. But Biggio stole some bases, got on base more, did have more hits, and I think he'll probably end up with more hits. I would still take Altuve just because the power is legit from this 5'5" second baseman. And by the way, at the end of this deal, he'll be the only second baseman in baseball history to have earned over $300 million.
It's such a good debate because you got the batting titles, right? You got all those postseason heroics. I mean, I still take Biggio just because I'll always take the older guy. That's how I process it. Hey, speaking of older guys, Clayton Kershaw, a 1-year deal to go back to the Dodgers with a player option for a second. I heard the discussion you had on the leadoff spot this morning on MLB Network Radio, and I agree with you that the player option for a 2025 season is the most interesting part of this.
Yeah, he's been going 1 year at a time. And so, so every year we're kind of hanging on. And, does he want to go to Texas? Does he want to come to Los Angeles? Look, Kershaw, he appreciates that he grew up in Texas. He wants to be a Dodger from start to finish. I'd be shocked if he ends up going anywhere else, because if he wants to keep pitching, the Dodgers will keep offering him a contract. So I think it comes down to next year, does he want to pitch or not? And if he does, it will be as a member of the Dodgers. The amazing thing is he's not made 30 starts in a season since 2015. Since 2015, he's averaging 22 starts a year from 2016 and through 2023. And during that period of time, he's 96 and 36, 60 games over 500 with like a 2.5 ERA. Even when he's hurt and not quite at full health and a little bit diminished, he's still the best in the game out there with his performance.
Wow, I love that. And I think for the Dodgers, we talked about this earlier, Steve, it's let's get everybody right for the tournament. Let's focus on October 1st in L.A. Before we let you go, you have been involved in arbitration hearings during your days as a general manager. The risk reward here is that you fracture a relationship with a player. Are the Blue Jays and Vlad Guerrero headed down that path, and what kind of ending do you see here?
Well, if they're in a really tough spot, because it's hard to negotiate a long-term extension, because Guerrero looks at himself as the guy that had the monster year in like 2019 or 2021. And the team saying, yeah, but you haven't been the same guy the last couple of years, so we can't pay you like the MVP candidate. We'll pay you a little bit less. And there's too big of a gap in there to make a deal. So they go to arbitration. My thought was that, usually it's a file and go. If we file numbers, we're going to go to a hearing unless we signed a multi-year deal. Now, Bo Bichette last year signed a 3-year deal after they filed numbers to buy out the arbitration years. I thought they might avoid the hearing. Look, either way, the arbitration panel, whether they issue this as a win or a loss for Guerrero, it's still the highest award out of an arbitration hearing anybody will get. He's $18.05 million. The Blue Jays filed $19.9 million. The player filed. And so it doesn't look like they're going to get a deal done for the short term. It may be going to have to go to free agency, establish what the market value is, and then the Blue Jays come in and say, we'll pay that to keep you here, because I think there's too big a gap in understanding who he is in his mind and who he's been for the team.
Yeah, we're all anxious for the details on this story because they're pending. We'll certainly be learning more about it in the following days. Steve Phillips joining us on Wednesday. Steve, as always, thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, guys.